Oh,
What's going?
Hey,
What's
Jay,
going on?
get Pax out of his coma, will you?
Yeah, I'm on it.
What? What's wrong? He was lifting his bags of money like Scrooge McDuck this morning. He's in a coma.
He's talking with one of his guys.
Oh, what's going on?
Nothing. I was just listening to what you guys put out Monday.
Yeah, I was there. I had to go back and listen to it. In fact, I might put it out on the blog today. It was actually I wanted to go back and listen to it. It was pretty right on target. Hey, for the time, we got a $60 break in the gold. I've actually bought a little back this morning. I'm looking. Nothing yet from the IMF, but something scared the gold. I know there are certain people out there thinking that the central banks were busy active in their, I don't give into that so readily. I just think the market had gotten ahead of itself. But, now we have Trump. Is Fax in the room yet?
He's on his way.
Margin calls, Ira. Margin calls.
Well, I don't think so. I think that's baloney. First of all, well, because the people who, you know what, yes, you sell what you can, but, for the most part, the stocks that went up were very liquid stocks. So it's not like, private equity investments that may be difficult to get out of. These are all pretty liquid. And people have gains. And you know what? I think the last thing that you would sell right now is the metals for a margin call because, listen, they've been more than a place to hide out. There's a place to do very well. And yes, you might want to take some off the table because I know that's just human nature and we're all, but I don't know. It's just, I just think, people said, hey, it's been a very, very, very good run. And
maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. What's a catalyst for something to go down? A rally.
Yeah, no, but more important, they hear, well, everything's going to go down, and there's people out there talking, well, if deflation sets in, you don't want to be in the gold. But I've stated my position on that for so long. It's exactly where you want to be, again, in the fiat currency world at this time. Because, again, listen to what these people say, meaning all the central bankers. They're hoping for some time for this to work out and they don't have to get ahead of it. Okay, yeah, I'm with you. Okay, great. Get that time, but you should have been ahead of it already. And now anything and everything you do looks like, again, you're caught in your own trap that you're only responding to the move in the equity markets. That's all it looks like. And that's where they get themselves in trouble. People made a lot out of it today about Germany. I know I must have had literally 50 emails about it from people. And I'm not complaining about that because that's one of the good things about doing this. You get a lot of feedback and, people want to make sure you see things. And because my time differential here, sometimes I don't see it in real time, which was this morning. But I'm going to tell you what, that German statement, as I wrote back to Judd on it, not worth anything. Tell me what you're going to do. Tell me how you're going to do it. Tell me, what they're talking about is suspending, of course, the Schwarz now, which is the black zero, which is their budgeting rules and regs. So, okay, but we don't know anything about amounts. Yeah, I could suspend them. And if it's €1 billion, what's €1 billion? It's meaningless. If it's 50 billion euros, I'd probably say meaningless. So let's get up to some numbers and tell me what you're going to do here. But it could be a one-off. No big deal. What it does, though, is give Italy room to move here. Like John Mayle, he gets room to move. And they're going to look and go, okay, they're suspending, we're suspending. We've already violated it. It doesn't matter. But we're suspending it, too, and everybody else. So you're going to get some fiscal stimulus. More importantly than Germany is watching what Christine Lagarde does here and how she tries to get out in front of this. Again, and I've never been a Christine Lagarde fan, but when she talks about being an owl versus a dove and a hawk, well, it's now time for the owl to make some noise. Let's see how let's see how good your vision is at night. So I'm really more interested in seeing what she pushes out here. My second main concern today right now is Donald Trump. Anybody besides myself believe that it's kind of interesting that it's taking place at 4 o'clock Chicago time? No. Gee, Globex shuts down for an hour from 4 to 5. He's speaking at 4. That always gets my attention because it's 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock on the East Coast, right? Or 6 o'clock.
Actually, I thought he was speaking at 6 o'clock East Coast time.
Oh, you're right. I'm thinking 4 o'clock here in Arizona.
Well, oh, yeah, you're
That's 5.
Arizona. Okay.
Yeah.
You're
right.
in Arizona.
Right.
Gotcha.
I am wrong. He will be speaking on the opening of the Globex, so that's not a concern to me then. But I don't know why he's speaking at 6. That's not prime time. That's really what threw me. Because if you had a major speech to make, why wouldn't you speak in a prime time rather than at 6 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Chicago time, 4 o'clock Arizona time? I apologize. I was dead wrong, and we'll see what happens.
No, guys,
but it still bothers me.
All you options guys, let us know if there's activity in the spots.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
that's where you're going to see it. People are going to buy lottos in front of this thing because that's their MO.
Yep.
Hey, Ira, this
100%.
I want to ask you something before we get too deep into to something more probably better. But yesterday's sell-off in gold. We talked the other day about the possibility of the IMF selling some gold, raising capital. Or do you see that? We were talking yesterday, Angelo, Peter, and I were talking about the possibility of either the IMF possibly selling gold off or just profit taking to raise some money for margin.
Well, it's funny because when Judd sent me and I watched that, and when we were talking about that, the gold, April gold was trading around 1680. I mean, it's right in front of you on the screen as we're talking. When we had that discussion, it could be the IMF. That's why I raised that issue. It was a concern to me because they're going to take a hit in Argentina. There's no question about it. I'm wondering whether Trump is going to suggest something like that, the way the gold is trading, because it really can't get much of a rally going here. So again, there has been so much buying over the previous 4, 5, 6 weeks that it's not a total surprise. Gold has had quite a move, but it's the way we had, even when the S&Ps got down lower on the day, they got lower a little bit ago. The gold really has had no rally this morning. So, it may well just be profit taking. It's not margin calls. But trust me, it's not margin calls because the gold has been ubiquitous in its strength. It's not only strong against the dollar, but it's, of course, very, very strong against all the other currencies as the dollar's rallied too. So people all over have, pretty good profits in this.
No,
are they taking some?
I misstated. I think what I meant was, an easy way to raise some quick cash, selling off some of their gold so that they can, cover some of the margin and equities.
Yeah, I don't, I just don't see that because if you have margin calls in equities, you better be selling off some of the equities that you've been buying because if you have margin calls with where this market is at, you have done a piss poor job, if I could be so blunt, in managing any type of equity portfolio. Sorry, that's you are way out over your skis. If the S&P is being 6 or 7% off their highs, then if you're struggling with margin calls here, I'm sorry. I just don't see it. This isn't like a 25% break. No, come on. You are way overextended if that's the case.
Ira, I heard that quite a few hedge funds were down 10, 11, 12% because of leverage. And yesterday the VIX hit 30.
Well,
Yeah, that's
we've been
You know,
looking-
that had to leave a mark.
That's a big monthly level that we identified Monday morning.
29, what was that? 29.5, right, Judd?
Yep, 29.5. Went right there, printed it, and that was you know, that was the end of the VIX. And until you start getting closes over you know, 31, you know, guys are going to be complacent. And the other thing is that, you know, something I totally missed this morning because I just didn't do the work. And you should, and this is just a heads up to anybody that's doing technical work, that the gold pit filled the gap to the downside, filled it to the upside, and it was a perfect technical trade if you actually looked at just the U.S. session. And
very
that,
important work.
and I didn't do it. So, you know, I'm guilty as well as, you know, as the next guy for sometimes not looking at everything I'm supposed to be.
Well, there's just so much to cover. You know what? It's like, I mean, I'm just stacked so high right now with stuff because I got to cover medical stuff. I got to cover. There's a lot of stuff to cover, and then you know find what I think is the best potential trade to go with it, and there's a lot of opportunity to it. You know, let's talk about a stock trade, and I'm not talking. You know, I am a director of the CME, but what it's been. Well, it's been out of, but those numbers have been out. I mean, this is all public information. There's nothing proprietary here whatsoever. The volume numbers are released every day. How do I know? Because I have 10 people who send them to me, and I'm not talking about, exchange people. Oh, you see the volume. These numbers have been explosive. And yes, I know that people, are selling stuff that they can and locking in some profits. But when you see the CME stock up $12, these numbers are not new. We've been running these crazy volume numbers for 6, 7, 8 days. Or if you look at all of February, the numbers, I think the average volume has been over the last year about 18.5 million a day. I mean, they're crazy numbers, So what shocks me is that nobody was buying it yesterday. Oh, it took today's, how many days you need? And you can see, and I'm only speaking about this in terms of the VIX, because here's one thing about whether it's the ICE, the CBOE, volatility begets volume. That's the story of the way, because people are really coming. The CME proves itself, as its ability to hedge risk, and people are, searching for all kinds of ways.
Volume off, Ira.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In a liquid market, and you see it, And again, with the VIX sellers, as we talked about on Monday, with the VIX, those people who are short vol, they have to start selling equity or equity futures, because it's the only way that they can protect themselves. So they can wind up in caught in a terrible double banger, because if they start to rally back and the vol stays strong, but you're now losing on the future sales. That's why I've never been a big advocate of that. But whatever works for you and as quickly as you can. But that's so much of what's going on, because what you saw in low vol times, you get low volume. It is amazing how the volume explodes, and it's because the vol sellers have to start finding ways to protect themselves.
Ira, can we go back to Argentina for a moment? I'm curious about something.
Well, I know some people there. They've left and they're not looking to go back. Oh, you mean just to go back to discuss it? Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, but my next door neighbor has an apartment in Buenos Aires. So we were at the mailboxes, and I joked with him, and I said, "Is Argentina ever going to pay their freaking bills?" And he looked at me. He looked at me and he goes, "I don't understand why the IMF and everybody else keeps lending Argentina money." I didn't have an answer. I mean, I can understand why the IMF may have lent money to Greece, all right, maybe to keep them in the euro. What I don't understand is why the hell everybody keeps throwing money at Argentina. That I don't understand. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, don't forget the IMF has a role to play, right? They have a role to play in this world. And if they were to cease fulfilling that role, then what purpose do they in fact have? So they have to, because that's what they were set up for. Because otherwise, if countries, what do you think bond rates would be? What do you think they would be though if people were really concerned that countries were going to outright default?
Oh, 25, 30, 40%.
Yeah, we saw it with Greece. We saw it with other places. It's not that long ago. And now look at Greece, 10-year yields dropped from 44% to 1%. You know what a difference that makes to the people of Greece? Because again, the sovereign has to borrow, and if it's paying those kind of rates, they can't get out from under it. So the IMF was set up to insure against that, especially as an institution that was one of the stalwarts against the Soviet Union and in its efforts to contain the Soviet Union. So the IMF provided that great backdrop. So now it's always seeking a purpose, and its purpose is to get involved in this. So
regardless of the ability to pay, right?
Well, the IMF goes in there with their professional team and devises out of their playbook and plans for them on how they're going to get back on their feet, and they're supposed to and they sign on and they'll follow that course of action. That's what it's all about. That's the optics of it. Listen, we saw it in Greece, and when the Greeks started to back off from what the original agreement was, the IMF was all over them, but the IMF was upset because the Germans were using the IMF to squeeze the Greeks so the Germans could get paid. So there's a lot of things that go on with this, but that's the role. And don't forget, the IMF, somebody could look it up. I think it's about, if you use market valuation, I think the IMF sits on about $300 billion worth of gold. I think they're like the fourth largest or third largest holder of gold in the world. Now, the IMF will say that's not our gold, that's our members' gold. Everybody can sign X amount of gold and contributed it when the IMF was formed, and there are restrictions on it. But there are times when the IMF does sell off gold, the last being November of 2009. They sold 200 tons, and intermittently they'll smooth things out. So they could raise capital, and they have capital to raise. They would rather, of course, get back from the people they lend money to, and of course that's why they are the senior debtor in any kind of workout that takes place. But why do they lend to Argentina? Because they have to. For the sake of the global financial system, you cannot have these countries going bust, because rates would ramp up dramatically for a lot of countries that were deemed suspect as creditors. As debtors, as debtors. So that's the significance of them. And they're always looking for a role. They're always looking for a spot.
All right, thank you. You just saved me a couple hours of research this weekend.
Yeah, that's fine. And if you go back, if we go back to 2001, 2002, when Steve Hanke from Johns Hopkins had helped create the dollar board for the Argentinians, in which they were supposed to keep $1 for every Argentinian peso or some form thereof, and that board really choked Argentina. It was a straitjacket, and they couldn't move. But that was the alternative to the world lending of money, that they had signed on to this very austere program, which wound up bankrupting them anyway, because they couldn't adhere to it. It was impossible. And and it's the same in Greece and other countries. Anytime you hear the discussion about internal devaluation, and that's what a lot of the austerity becomes, you're talking about cutting wages, because that's what an internal devaluation means. Instead of depreciating your currency, wages go down dramatically in the country, and in order to get their budget situation worked out. But the pain for the populace is too great for any government to adhere to. The Greeks did it, and they do that in order to run a primary budget surplus, but it was hell in Greece. It was hell. They really went through a lot now, and they're still not out of the woods yet. But the fact that those rates are down, people are chasing yields and they say, okay, what it proved is that they're going to do everything that they can. What Draghi said, whatever it takes to secure the existence of the euro. Well, we know what's coming. You can only secure the existence of the euro, of course, with a euro bond. If you have a euro bond, hey, then all debt should basically compress to very close levels. Because if there's a central banking authority and a central fiscal authority to stand behind it, that will raise the burden on the Germans and ease the burden on everybody else. So if you finally come to that, so be it. So be it.
All right. So while you were talking, I went through all those I put up the Argentine peso, which is still imploding.
Yeah.
The stock market doesn't look much better, and I just put up the Plaza Accord fibs in the euro again. We're still dancing around those levels back and forth.
Well,
the only thing I'm looking at today, Ira, is, hold on, let me get the right chart up, is SPU bonds below the 200-day.
Yeah, you know what? We should come back.
What?
You know, I have to say, it was that chart that actually had this room taking a good look at it at the top. You know, and again, it was only 2 weeks ago we were discussing that hey, the inability for it to make a new high and failing up there for a third time, or I would say a third time, so was really a telltale, and that's without the virus. But and we talked about it in depth that day, because they said at least if you want to get short the SPUs, you can define your risk in a very low measured way, which is, I think, really what the entire goal of all these conversations are. If we find something that's an interesting trade, how do we limit our loss potential? And that was really one of the classics. Where is it going to go now? I don't know, but it does get interesting, doesn't it? I mean, we have December of 2018 as our outlier, and now we're trapped in the middle here, and that's with, you know, because it comes from two ends, of course. We really saw it this week with the S&Ps getting hammered and yields dropping dramatically. So
what's even bigger to me is you know, the stop run in the Nasdaq. On the, you know, it started out with the daily ORL, then it went to a weekly ORL, then it got the monthly stops, and now you know, I'm not sure there's a bottom yet.
Yeah, well, you know what? It is amazing, you know, and you can do with it as you want. But, and again, it's I'm not saying it's easy to trade it. It's not. But when you do see things begin to change and you see mean reversion trades begin to take place, wow, they become really powerful quickly. And that's, you know, the moving averages to me are only mean reverting, whether they're 200 week, 200 days, you know, whatever you're using. And that doesn't mean, you know, again, mean reversion is it's great when it works, but you know, it's the great line from Keynes, of course, which is markets can remain irrational far longer than you and I can remain solvent. You don't trade against it until you have a lot more than just, oh, you know, it's this far extended. Well, it can stay overextended for a long period of time as long as there's a narrative that propels it there. But when cracks come into a narrative, that's when you really start to see things take place. And I'm not a contrarian. That's not the way I trade. And Judd can confirm this. Anybody who really was a currency trader, that's not a contrarian trade. It's not like, you know, standing in the board of trade grain pits, and if everybody wants to buy them, you're selling them because the public is always stupid. And that's the premise of, you know, or things get so overextended, I'm just going to sell them, whether it's an hour or 2 hours. No, currency traders, I mean, you could have 100 people standing on the floor of the IMM, all being long Deutschmarks and all making money. And the ones who are short are so far away in the world or sitting at banks, or that it's a whole different phenomenon. So I'm not a contrarian by established practices. It's not the way I operate. So mean reversion is a hard thing for me to wrap my arms around, but yet I know that when things do race, everybody gets money. But I don't just jump on it. I want to look at the narrative of it and see where things are starting to, well, you know, no, I'm just not accepting that. And I start to see some shifting. Then you can start, you know, as long as you can define it. But when a market is in a parabolic rally, you can't find a level. Yeah, I mean, you can find Fibonacci levels, but probably even not that. And you just let it run and work its way out.
But you know, the targets that we create off of the work we follow have been unbelievably accurate year in and year out. I mean, well, which is all you care about. End of story. Yeah, I mean, in 2018, it had 20. What was it? 29.65 and went to 29.44 and broke 500 handles. So you got to respect them. You got to respect those levels.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. That's absolutely right. You respect the levels because that's just it. You have to, and you respect the ability for it to really do significant damage to you financially. So, you know, I don't run to be a mean reversion. I wait to see things, and of course, just like with that S&P bond spread that we watched, there was a broadening formation. It just didn't go. You know, it laid there for a long time because it has to convince a lot of people that, again, those famous words, this time it's different. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's never. I don't believe that for a minute. Yeah, there are different elements to everything. There are different catalysts. But listen, they have not gotten rid of the business cycle. I don't believe it. Yeah, we've been in expansion for 11 years, but that was coming out of a massive financial dislocation. So how much thrust do we get from that? I don't know. But that's somebody's doctoral dissertation, that depending upon how bad it is, you know, how long is there enough energy, enough steam in the system to keep propelling it? And again, we haven't had a fabulous growth. You know, it's not like when you would get 6, 7, 8% growth coming out of economic downturns. This has just been slow and steady as everybody, you know, tries to figure out. You get some new technologies driving it. There are drivers to it, but I don't believe that they've rescinded the business cycle. I just have to find other ways to understand how it's being impacted. Because unless you rescind capitalism, if you rescind capitalism in the American understanding of it, then okay, maybe you've rescinded the business cycle, but that won't be good for everybody. And if you rescinded if you've ended capitalism in America, then I would tell you the stock market is definitely overvalued. So, and I'm not saying that, but if you're telling me that they've rescinded capitalism, fine.
Yeah, plus
Now I got a whole.
you know what day of the week to look for this, and you've been on it in 2018. It's a Wednesday, Thursday deal, and we had another one.
Yeah, I'm not always sure about timing. It's just, but I'll adjust. So I keep watching it and seeing. So, again, being trading and investing, if you're static, you have no chance. It's a dynamic. And there are dynamics at work, and hopefully I'm good at spotting them. Because if not, then my days are over as doing this. But we'll see. But these are certainly, as the Chinese would say, the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. These are interesting times, and for many reasons. Again, we're discussing the impact of the COVID-19, as long as we can put a name to it, virus, but the politics are not insignificant either, and I read, I didn't watch, it's really hard for me because I've always been such a political junkie, and I watch a little bit of this stuff, and I can't take the hand raising, and, it's just, I don't know, they really don't get into the stuff of what I consider really deep policy that I want to listen to. So they're all just trying to position themselves to oppose Trump, and that's fine. But I'm just not getting bringing any policy. I'd rather read about not the rebuttal of it, but I read stuff when they write. When they write about foreign policy, I'll go read the piece. I don't get a good sense of it now, and I'm sorry for that, because I really used to just love to do this, but when they will it out. But I will say this: Milwaukee, as I've said before, 2020. I thought it was in Miami, of course, but I was confusing with the Super Bowl. Milwaukee is going to be very interesting, far more interesting than anybody wants to talk about. Because if the Democrats think they have a problem now, if Bernie is really in full force going into the convention and they broker it and he doesn't come out the leader, I think Democrats are going to have a massive, massive problem. Anything else we're chewing on? I mean, the market's is just kind of settling in here. It's going to wait for what Trump has to say. He'll probably beat up the Fed. We can probably lay out a game plan. What's he going to talk about? That the virus is in this is all, if he would read Shakespeare, he could probably say this is much ado about nothing. But he won't come up with that phrase, but he'll say this has been well overstated. It's directed at him. Yeah, I mean, pick your poison.
He'd be ill-advised to minimize it.
About
I agree.
stuff, changed to Chicago, because you don't know what is going to happen, and it might be that you can't travel in a couple of months.
Yeah, you don't know. Listen, and again, let's come back to, Mike Temple on on Notes from Underground wrote about it last week about the Japanese Olympics. And I said when I talked to Toby, he thought it was far too early, but there are people starting to make noise about it, But again, a lot of this is because we just don't know. And the lack of transparency, just in case anybody really needs to have it confirmed. I mean, we're traders. We need to live in the world of transparency where you can be able to analyze things that have some authenticity to it. The lack of transparency is not a good thing ever. Sorry, it's just not. Bad policy comes out of lack of transparency. And I don't care whether it's the Gulf of Tonkin. I don't care if it's looking for yellow cake in Iraq in 2003. The lack of transparency gets us into a lot of trouble. And the Chinese are really feeling it, because again, as you know, and I don't know whether Mike's in the room or not, but he's been all over it. If you must be forthright so that you can really face what exists. It's like people who don't want bad news. I'm afraid to tell them bad news. Then how are you going to fix a problem? You can't fix it if you have, insufficient information. And there's so many places in the world that have lived in the shadows for so long who are afraid of their people knowing things. If you really want to, and this is something that you need to deal with, open up, tell us, let us know what's going on. And unfortunately, it plays into certain people's hands, and it's just not a good thing. We do better. The more, I've always believed, the more light shines on any problem, the faster the problem gets resolved.
People are nervous. I mean, I got on a train car yesterday, O'Hare, to come home, and I, oxygen, and I was coughing with a mask on. The whole car emptied
Oh
out.
God!
The whole car
God!
emptied out. They all
Yeah, you're a popular guy, I'll bet.
Oh yeah, they were running.
What was it? The guy that was trying to convert you?
Yeah, that guy too.
Jesus loves you. No, we don't.
Hare Krishna, my friend. Hare Krishna. Yeah, you're a popular guy. Oh yeah. What?
Oh yeah.
I'm surprised you did.
They gave me an entire row, Ira. They said I had to sit next to the window, and they gave me an entire row.
That makes me laugh.
Yeah. But the only thing missing was you didn't have a baggage tag from Fuan.
Yeah, there you go. They didn't realize that they were the ones that could kill me, not me killing them.
Yeah, got imperfect information.
Yeah.
Nobody would have believed you.
Robert was yeah. Robert, are you here? Robert was in Venice yesterday. Or just got home.
Yeah, I know.
Venice.
Did you make it home?
Yes, I'm back, Ira.
Oh, Robert, I'm glad you're back. And listen, so you traveled. So the journey is, did anybody give you any problem?
No, that's the scary thing, Ira. I brought the team of 5, and some guys went through Chicago from Madrid. Some people flew from Amsterdam, like me, to Atlanta, and some to Minneapolis. All 3 ports did not even ask the question other than, have you been in China in last 30 days? That's
all they asked? Yeah.
It's scary. Well, when I listened to Polish news yesterday, they take the record of every single passenger who comes from Italy and China. What seat number do they have on a plane? How long have they been? Where they have been? We are not ready. We can just let anybody in here who can crawl in.
Robert, yesterday I was taking off, or Monday, and a Cathay Pacific flight is coming in and landing. I mean, what are they thinking of?
Nothing.
It's concerning to me.
Well, listen, but on the other hand, a lot of medical professionals say this is not a pandemic. This is, yes, it's definitely something to be concerned about, but they're not at that panic stage yet. And I guess that's what we're going to hear tonight, or late evening from Donald, is that, it's not nearly as bad. Look at the United States. Again, did Italy, and again, this got set off with the Italians and probably the Koreans, the South Koreans. But it was their, you know, move into dealing with it in a very aggressive way. And you know what? For them and their populations, they're right. But others will go, you know, well, you know, it needs to be watched. And again, the operative phrase is, how lethal is this? And you know what? Nobody talks about it. They're talking about raw numbers, but they're not talking about how lethal it is to younger, healthier people. I mean, that to me will be when this really changes. And again, we don't know numbers about kids. Why are the kids missing in this equation? And I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm trying to look at it in a much more non-emotional way, as we talked about the other, you know, last Friday we talked about, you know, there's a human cost to this, no question about it. But at the end of the day, you're relying on science, most of all, who is in a much more, they view things in a much more sterile, non-emotional way. They can't afford the emotionism. They can't, because then we don't want them to panic. Then we're really in a bad situation. So they will look at it and keep analyzing it, measure. God knows how many people there are looking at this and researching it and looking at the genetic makeup of it. And I mean, thank God in today's world we have the ability to really look at things in a much more in-depth fashion than we did in 1918.
It's also, there's a lot of misinformation goes about. Like, you know, I've had, I don't know, somebody was telling me they thought there'd be a vaccine in 3 months, and it's like, I don't think so. You know.
Yeah. Right.
Trump's advisors might be minimizing it, and he's going to, you know, try to talk up the market. That would be a huge mistake for him to do that.
Well, he's done.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, he was doing it from India, Peter. He got on India.
That's his instinct, but he needs more information.
Yeah, well, he doesn't care to have that input, but that's
he's wrong often, but he straightens out after a bit.
But you do not want to politicize this. This is it's in nobody's interest. From either side, you do not play politics with this, because it'll bite you. What you get for a momentary headline, it will bite you. It's one of those things. You know, it's like George Bush going mission accomplished. I guarantee you, he would like to take that comment and reverse it. You know.
But Robert's story about the getting on the plane, there's actually reports. There's reports coming out how this is showing up in, like, Brazil. That was somebody who was in Italy and then flew from Paris to Brazil, and this is going. There's a Korean flight attendant who was flying all over the world for a couple days, who has probably spread it all over the plane, and she's been come down with it today. This shit's getting out, and I think when we saw this huge acceleration in Italy over the last week in Korea, we're going to see a lot more of that now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what the scientists are waiting to see, because again, there's still a question how, in fact, it does really spread. So, but they'd be all advised not to politicize this. This is not this is health, and if you politicize it, it's going to bite you one way or another, because we don't know. You never know the way anything spreads, anything, and if you politicize it, it's a stupid attempt to make a short-term gain. I think you'll suffer dramatically at some point.
I thought it interesting yesterday in the morning. Jim Cramer, your favorite guy, was all over CNBC touting the vaccine. That was the first that I heard of it. Was Cramer talking about Moderna's possible vaccine, and then later on the HHS press conference. They've charted out the doctor talking about that too. You know, at this early stage of a possible vaccine, they have a doctor talking about it at, you know, at all attempts again to bolster the politicized tweet that President Trump sent out this morning. Again, love him or hate him, how can we like a tweet that politicizes this event? This is all being blown out of proportion by the lamestream media that, you know, failing at CNN garbage. You know, come on.
Right. Just leave it alone. You're better off not touching it.
Well,
Let everybody else look ridiculous. That would be my view.
he can't. He's got to be the news.
Yeah.
Right or wrong,
No,
he's gotta-
I know. Listen, if there's one thing, and I can go back and write, I wrote about it 2 days after he was elected in the blog. Yeah, one thing that he's good at, and he understands, is controlling the narrative. I mean,
Yeah.
God, I wrote several blogs, and that's been a consistent. And you know what? The media makes it because he understands the media. Because he, you know what? The Apprentice, and he got a good look at how this all works. He says, "Oh, this is easy. They can't afford to have nothing, and I am the story. So I'm going to be the story." So and he works it well. You know, from the day he got elected. Before then, because even with the Republicans during those debates, and you go, you know, look at them, and they were all bad, and all he would do is shine a light on himself, and they would come by the truckload to report whatever he said or did. It was pretty easy for him to say, "Hey, see, this works." Between him and Bannon, they had it laid out pretty well. And you know what?
The more outrageous, the more traction it got.
Feeding frenzy, and he spent a lot less on getting elected, well, or getting the nomination than all those others who, you know, couldn't, you know, hat in hand to everybody. Trump did it for free, and the media was actually a little upset, more than a little upset, because they were beating the path to him, and he wasn't spending money advertising. Huh. The worst
He's
thing
a
that
real
could
dummy, huh,
possibly
Trump?
happen.
He's a real dummy,
Yeah.
Judd, isn't he?
Yeah, he understood. He said, "Okay,
He's got.
we can play."
I'll give him that, Peter. He is very astute that way.
Yeah, he's understood. And you know what? And the media decries him and screams about him,
Well,
and they feed it.
They elected him because they
Yep.
followed his nonsense.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. See, unless you really got a policy story, I'm not interested. But it's more than, and the fact that these tweetings, you know, and now everybody's a tweeter. You know, really. Somebody said, "Do you subscribe to Trump's tweets?" I go, not ever, ever, ever.
I don't either.
Yeah, it's a
Because
look.
if you do, you're feeding it. I'm not feeding it. I will never feed it. I'm opposed to any world leader tweeting things out. Really? If you can tell me everything you got to tell me in 143 characters, I know it's more than that now. You know what? You really don't have much to talk about.
Not much of substance.
No, you're just a narcissist who you're no different than the Kardashians. That's what you are. You're Kardashians or any athlete who has to tweet out, "You know what? You got to be in the light. You got to be in the light." Okay, bye. Hey, Pat, you know, you had to do the tweets for me to tweet out the blog. I'm not doing it. You know what? Fine.
Well, it works. At least we get that
It
blog out.
did.
We've got people
It
talking. Yeah.
works.
Right. Because the blog is substance. I will say that. Not,
Of course.
you know, a lot goes into. I can't do that. Somebody said, "Why don't you just tweet out?" Because if I did 143 characters, you'd misconstrue, and I'd say, "Oh, he's an idiot." I can, you know, I can't get that message across. I can't get it across in an hour most of the time. But no, but you know what I mean. And they just feed them. So now we'll see what we're fed tonight. But I do apologize because I got my time mixed up because I'm in Arizona. So he's going to be talking right when Globex opens. It'll be interesting what he has to say.
right at Globex opens, right at the thinnest part of the day. That's what I wanted to ask you that. There's two. I wanted to ask you both of you guys, Judd and Ira. Does the fact that we've had this seems to me, I went back to see if we've left a bigger gap, and I in the Nasdaq, I don't think we've had a bigger gap ever. And the S&P, I can't see one.
Let me see. I'm gonna go on my trusty.
And if that's true, is there any significance in that? You know, from a long-term standpoint.
Ooh, look at that! Yeah, we'll come back and fill it. That much I know. I don't know when, but.
Well, yeah, right.
I don't know. I can't answer that. So it's not my forte. So I'm gonna leave that alone. I'll let Judd discuss that. Yeah, we don't. But again, if we look to the gold, I'm still paying attention, and the impacts. The question about Argentina is right, but there's other places, and let's see. And again, the central banks are all trying to appear patient here, and they're not. But I think they dropped the ball to begin with. You know, what the hell were you sitting there doing? I know the answer. It's not a good answer. This is an economic event. This is not a financial market event yet. This is the markets reacting to a genuine economic concern that it's either going to be a demand shock or a supply shock, and most probably you're going to get both. So, but what comes first, and how do you react to it? And they've been slow. And as I'll beat them up again, if 3 Nobel laureates had put on option positions that were short vol and they were in trouble, they'd be quick to cut rates, just like with Jerome Kerviel at SocGen. I know I say it ad nauseum, but wake up to what is really going on in the world. It's amazing how slow they are to respond to what looks like a potential economic situation. And I'm going to leave it there.
All right.
Well, all right. Not much market stuff, but we'll take the opportunity to smooth some stuff out here. So as we move on ahead, but that DAX was really in trouble last night. Okay. They're gonna play with it around these levels too. And I know it got a boost off of that comment from the Germans, but again, let me finish with that. The German comment said nothing. That was like somebody calling the finance minister and going, "Say something. We need you to say something." And don't laugh, because that's a lot of times that's what goes on. By the way, get out there and make a statement. Get out there and make a statement. You know what? Better to say, and yet maybe it's not better to say. If you don't have anything substantial, yeah, it halted it. But yeah, you know what? Now everybody says, "What do you got?" And you don't have anything.
Yeah, it's just sitting right at the 200 day. So great.
Yeah, it's right on the 200 day. They got nothing. Not one iota. Oh, we're going to suspend it. I don't know what that means. Okay, we'll see. The Germans have phenomenal amount of room, you know. But again, let's watch Christine Lagarde, because she becomes of paramount importance here, because she's the only one who can speak for Europe.
Wow.
And
DAX
she doesn't.
DAX Bund has a really bad high today.
Yeah, that's good. You know, I haven't been watching, like I said.
200 day was the high of the day.
Yeah.
So, Lagarde, Ira, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like a month or
I
two
think
ago,
it's
we were talking, and it seems like her mission was to, you know, create the Eurobond and pull off something that's politically really difficult. But now the Brits are out. Now coronavirus. Now AFD's winning. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Looking sketchy. Very sketchy.
Well, this is the time this is actually a time that she could rise to the occasion, because things are exactly that. And I'll tell you what, the Germans, I'd like to tell you that they have some power, some negotiating power here, but everybody is in so deep right now. A German 9 to Europe would, I believe that would cause a calamitous deflationary outcome. Just my call, because then you would wind up with a debt crisis. Now that's, again, that's off, so far off.
Yeah, but what isn't far off is like a real recession kicking off now because of this virus being the catalyst. So how's that?
Yeah.
I mean, that could create the crisis, you know, with the ECB,
right.
you know.
Right, and she could use that to seize the day. That's a, you know, I hate to quote Rahm Emanuel, but you never let it. And he stole it from somebody else. I found out anyway. I forgot who's got, you know, that you never let a crisis go to waste. And you know what? And believe me, those words are probably tattooed on Lagarde's ankles that she can stare down at every day. Do not let this crisis go.
Yeah, but you know, she's not an executive. She's somebody who's heading a committee that needs the broad support of a lot of diverse and various people out there. You know, and I'd say the only way they get something is if they get the culture, political culture in Europe is if everyone gets something for nothing, i.e. printing money, but money printing is maybe starts not to become a policy option. So she can't give away something for nothing. I mean, she's kind of a figurehead, and she's a figurehead, or it makes it look good. I think it's all, and she can make decisions, but I think you're nailing where the direction she needs to go. But I'm really skeptical that she can really go there. I don't really think that power lies in the person there in that office.
Well, you know, that is an interesting conversation. But I'll tell you the power she does have. She has a $4 trillion balance sheet that needs to be funded and financed, and it can only do so with the credibility that the ECB as an institution has. Because if people were to really become nervous again, and I say again, about the credibility of the ECB and forget whether Jerome Powell says they have a printing press, insignificant, that could really shake the foundations of the global financial system. End of story, because there's nobody big enough to save them. So they need that sense of credibility. And that's a very powerful wedge for her. Because all she does
like
is
if you don't follow me, the whole thing's going to blow up, basically.
Yeah, and not for public that's behind closed doors. Because if you know, again, what's the Trader B posted the thing on Sunday's blog with the scene from Bronx Tales. I don't know if you guys saw it, but now you just can't leave. And you know what? The Germans can't leave. It may have gone so far. No, because they will shake the foundations of the global financial system.
I think you're right about that. I think that's the last line of defense of this paradigm, and that card is going to be played. It hasn't been played yet.
It ain't pretty. It's not pretty, but that's where we lie. And you know what? That's what Draghi did. He locked them in. He locked them in, and it's what she wants to do with it. So there's a lot of, at the end of the day, that is, of course, when do you call the existential question? That's what they're going to talk about. When do you call the existential question? Because that is the existential question. And it's not just the existential question for Europe anymore, because you see how intertwined this is. She knows, you can say that Lagarde is a figurehead, but she's a woman who has survived the travails of the IMF and, more importantly, the French political system. She's very politically astute. And that's why, I laugh. But when she said she's an owl, she knew, she said, I'm removing myself from the classic sense of, I'm dovish or hawkish. I'm an owl, which means I'm a pragmatist, and I'm going to do what needs to be done. End of story. You can you can all harden your positions that you're this, you're that. I'm an owl. I'm going to use the wisdom to find a pragmatic solution out of these existential problems. And this gets interesting, especially because the Germans. What a silly statement! Oh yeah, we're going to suspend the black zero for the moment. Yeah, great. Tell me what you're going to do. Give me the numbers. Harden it so that I understand what you want to do. But they don't know because their politics are so freaking bad. And see, that's why there's nothing free. And that's why when we look at all this stuff and we look to find ways to find profitable trades, you look around the edges. And again, Pax, what do we bring to the table?
Context and nuance.
That's right.
Context
and that's
and
what
nuance.
we strive. That's what we look to understand. And we sure have. There's a need for context, but there's certainly a need to understand the nuances, because that's where we are. And everything is now, they're flitting around the edges, and that's what Europe's doing right now. They're all grabbing with, they're doing as much praying as they are anything else right now. First of all, that this subsides, and then they'll get out. Because if they have to really react to a genuine crisis, and it's just not that yet. I know, $2 trillion get knocked off global equity markets, $3 trillion, whatever the number is. Yeah, but you know what? No, because equity markets have been on a one-way run for so long. All we're doing is removing initially some of the froth that's been in the market. This is far from being something that's what I would consider even a major event yet. It could become so, but it's not. It's not. And there's a lot of, we are left with a lot of nuance, and it needs context. And so we're understanding it. And again, we're playing around the edges here too with Argentina. These things aren't going away, and these problems that exist in the world, they're not going away. The light is being shined on the COVID-19, but there's still many. We were in the throes of many problems, let alone the political discussion in the United States, and it's a serious political discussion. So I think we'll end it there. And again, I implore questions, because we'll make these even that much more meaningful as we go along.
All right, guys, before Ira goes here, let's just look at some quick technicals. S&Ps need to sustain under 34 to break. They need over 72 to rally. The NASDAQ 100 needs under 88.86 on the point and figure to break anywhere. And it needs over basically 89.90 to go up. That's going to be resistance. So those are your bigger parameters right now, and anything in between is in between, and stay out of the mess.
Yeah, you know what? And we'll come back to one last thing. We'll discuss more of it, because actually some people have woken up to it. That is the peso for real here? Because the only reason I care about the peso being for real is because it'll be a signal that some of the global supply chains are truly going to be moving. And it's not just that China, between the tariffs, that was bad enough, but I think that the lack of transparency is going to come back and bite the Chinese in the short term in the face. There's going to be a price to pay, because it's a difficult situation. If you're not getting good information, and you have a country that, we've seen some potential, and I stress the potential for pandemics to emanate from there, going back to SARS in 2003, it becomes an uncomfortable place to exist in, from a business perspective. So, this is really early, very early. And as I say, I'm always early in some of the stuff that I see. But the Mexico becomes a very interesting place to watch because our U.S., even with all the corruption, you know what? And if AMLO really has to get to work in Mexico because they need to get rid of the corruption that breeds so much of that violence to bring Mexico to its next stage of development. So this is going to be a long time to play out, but there are people who've been writing about, wow, the peso's really held up here. And I go, yeah, first of all, because it is a recipient of some of the carry trade money, but I think you are seeing companies go, I'm far better off in Mexico. The labor force is a good labor force. So listen, anybody who lives in America who deals with Mexican citizens who come here to work, we know how quality the labor force is. It's just, the corruption is an unbelievable expense. But the currency being as cheap as it is on a relative basis to the entire global system gives you an added incentive. And their inflation rate is down into the 3s. So it's not like, that currency has dropped without rapid inflation. So, and that's over 25 years. Inflation rate's been pretty constant, 4%, 5%, but it hasn't been ridiculous, where the currency drops from 3.3 to 22. I mean, that's a significant depreciation of the currency. Now, yes, it made up for previous inefficiencies, but something to watch, and not on our radar screen today. We've seen a little bit of a correction in KSU, which represents that. I'd like to see it get down into the 140s, and I would actually get back my position that I exited around those levels. So I will be paying attention to that. But again, something more long-term on our radar screen, because there's going to be seismic shifts that take place in the global supply chains. Just something I'll put on the table. Okay.
Thanks, Ira.
All right, thanks,
All
Ira.
right,
Look for
you will,
Mexico
guys.
look for Mexico to benefit from China's problem with.
And
Right.
all the stops, the flush is 152.88 in KSU.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? It's really held up well in spite of, we've had a nice correction here, but everything's correcting. Everything that was run up, people ran it to banks are finding that no place to hide there either. So we'll see, but and I think the point that Pax and others have raised is, you're seeing some profit taking from people, who it's not for margin calls. It's like, it's the mentalness, and everybody in this room knows it as traders. When you're undergoing a lot of shit, you get out of good trades, and I think that's what you're seeing. And it's not to meet margin calls, not at this point in time, but it is there's a feel-good factor to it.
Pax, you looking at this 25 by 3?
Yes, of course. It was just reversed on it.
Yeah, there you go. And then 1921, your 1921 level, that's the bottom of value on the 50.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks for
Ira, thank you again.
engaging. All right. Okay.
Have a wonderful
Ira.
day and a great week. We'll talk soon.
Take care, Ira.
All right. Okay, guys. Bye.